Welcome to your Canadiens Connection on Rocket Sports Radio. We are proud to be the trusted source for all things Habs for more than a decade. This is the Canadiens Connection Podcast.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Canadiens Connection Podcast here on Rocket Sports Radio, keeping you informed, engaged, and entertained. My name is Michael Spinella, and I'll be your host for the next hour. This is episode 279 of the Canadiens Connection Podcast, and I'm very pleased to be joined in the studio by my co-host, the editor of the Hockey News Montreal, the founder and the president of Rocket Sports, Rick Stevens. And Rick, how are you doing today? Nice to have you back in the studio.
Thanks very much. Glad to be back. Glad to be back for the entire show this week, especially because we have such a great show. There's you and I. There's Amy Johnson's going to come in for a bit, and we have two special guests today. It's just that kind of show where we're talking about prospects, prospect development, past, present, future. The torch carries on through the Montreal Canadiens organization. But let me ask you a question. Do you know what a try shorthanded goal is?
No, that doesn't sound familiar at all.
No, and I was unfamiliar too. It means you score a shorthanded goal when you're down three players. How can that happen? Oof. Well, on a very unusual situation, we're going to get Patrick Williams in here to help us break that down and explain that to us, and then another special guest in the second segment for another rather unusual situation, talking about a former Montreal Canadiens prospect.
Absolutely. Quite the busy week. Lots of Montreal Canadiens games. So plenty to get you up to date with in this first segment here. We'll go through the games, some roster updates. We'll talk prospects, and that's where we'll have Patrick Williams come in. We've got some news at the end of this segment. And then in segment two, like you said, Canadiens prospects, present, future, and past. And that's where we're going to have you and I to start that one. Then Amy Johnson's going to take over for a little bit as we welcome Chris Ballard to the show. So very excited for that as he does some play-by-play for the Newfoundland Growlers of the ECHL. And then in segment three, it's the Have Your Say segment. We're going to toss it over to our listeners. Our Canadiens Connection question of the week is, should Kent Hughes be pursuing a point-per-game player during the rebuild? We want to hear from you. And Rick, I know a lot of our listeners like to reach out to us, but what's the best way to do so?
Well, they certainly do like to reach out to us. So we've set up a special text line. You can reach us by text 24 hours a day. The number's easy. It's 5853-ROCKET, 5853-ROCKET. I'll say it one more time, 5853-ROCKET. If you have a little more to say, you might send us an email. You can reach us at hello@rocketsportsmedia.com.
You can also find us on social media, and just make sure you're following at Habs Connection on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram. Also, we do have a website. You can check that out, canadiensconnection.fm. Make sure throughout the week you check out our comprehensive pregame previews and postgame recaps for every Canadiens game at thn.com/Montreal. That's the Hockey News Montreal. And here's what's happened since we were last here. 4 games for the Montreal Canadiens. If we want to go all the way back to last Saturday, January the 13th, they lose in overtime to the Oilers 2-1. The Habs were actually outshot 41-24. Caulfield with a power play goal in the first. That would stand and give Montreal a lead until the third period, where the Oilers were finally able to get on the board. It was Draisaitl, and then in overtime, Evan Bouchard wins it for the Oilers.
And they won that on the power play. Mike Matheson, not a very good penalty in overtime that turned that game. Sam Montembeault, a good game. 18 saves in the third period alone in a losing effort.
A couple days off in between, and that brings us to January the 15th. As the Colorado Avalanche come to Montreal, and Montreal wins this one 4-3 against one of the better teams out there. I think this, I'm going to call this game the Jake Allen show. He was brilliant in this one, in my opinion. Montreal had a pretty strong special teams throughout the night. Both their penalty kill and power play were quite successful. Bit of an off night and goal for the Colorado Avalanche is Alexander Georgiev. Just a couple of goals that I think he would like to have back in this one, but Montreal being very opportunistic and capitalizing on their chances.
Yeah, you thought he should have those goals back. His head coach, Jared Bednar, thought he should have those back too. Was quite openly critical of the goaltending in that game. But on the positive side, Jake Allen, as you said, was brilliant, especially on the penalty kill. A great game for Jake on that, and Joel Armia, that lunging effort for the game winner. Joel Armia, Jake Allen, the JAs had it there.
Absolutely. And speaking of being quite opportunistic, the next game, Montreal visits the New Jersey Devils and win 3-2. And I'm going to be honest here, I thought the Devils outplayed Montreal for the most part. It wasn't that interesting of a game. Both teams kind of struggled to get their chances. But a few mistakes by the Devils in their own zone, whether by defenders or their own goaltender, Nico Dawes, led to 3 Montreal goals. And Montreal, like I said, just capitalizing on those mistakes by the Devils. The Devils just struggled to get their offense going. Their only 2 goals came on the same 4-minute power play at the beginning of the third period. Sam Montembeault was pretty good in this one too. A few timely saves and really kept the Montreal Canadiens in that one.
In this game, I think it was the assists that were more spectacular than the goals.
Yeah.
First, Cole Caulfield kind of backhanding it out of the air to Yuri Slafkovsky for his goal. And then Sean Monahan, just a gorgeous setup so that Joshua Waugh could pot his first NHL goal.
Joshua Waugh is going to own Sean Monahan like 3, maybe 5 beers after that assist. Absolutely crazy move there by Monahan. And that was the first of a back-to-back. They go to Ottawa the next night, and, well, it was not a great result for the Canadiens as they get spanked 6-2. Don't really have much positive to say about Montreal in this one. Kind of a rough game for Caden Primo and net. Ottawa outshot the Montreal Canadiens 17-6 in the first period. I think Ottawa also scored 2 goals per period, basically, to get to that 6. Pretty dominant in this one. I don't think Montreal was ever really in this game. I think they were benefited from being down maybe 2-1 after that first period. So Caden Primo kind of held them in there, but it all just kind of fell apart in the end.
Yeah, 32 saves for Caden Primo, but the goals he gave up, and he gave up 5, lots of softies in there. It was not a good night for Caden Primo. That said, he wasn't the only problem. That the first line was completely crushed by Ottawa in this game. They were combined -7. That's the Canadiens' top line in the game.
Yeah, so Montreal losing to a bad team, but also beating a pretty good team at the beginning of the week. So a little bit all over the place. Their record currently 19-19-7. That's 45 points, 24th in the NHL, and the Habs currently have a 2.9% chance of making the playoffs, projecting out to be about an 80-point season. So make sure you check out Habs Notepad, Habs headlines, feature articles, and game day posts appearing regularly at thn.com/Montreal. Taking a look at our roster news, Joshua Waugh made his debut against the Edmonton Oilers last Saturday. He's gotten into 4 games. He scored his first career goal against the Devils, like we just talked about.
Yeah, against the Devils, I thought he looked. I thought that was his best game. He had the goal. He had 5 shots on net. He was engaged. He was still a little lost in his own zone, and that's been kind of consistent through the 4 games. He's really not ready to accept the defensive responsibilities of the NHL game. And the other 3 games, I thought he was pretty invisible, and that was getting some decent ice time at 12.5 minutes. I think you and I were talking before the show, and it's just nothing against Joshua Waugh, just not ready. And probably needs a little more seasoning, and it would be nice for him to head back to Laval and contribute as Laval is starting to heat up and may go on a bit of a run to secure a playoff position.
Absolutely. And Josh Anderson is expected to make his return to the lineup against the Bruins. He was day-to-day for the past few games, so it's going to be nice to get him back. Maybe that's the opportunity to send Joshua Waugh back down to Laval with this player coming back from injury.
Yeah, he'll be in the lineup against the Bruins. He's been out since the 11th of January. That was against the San Jose Sharks. For the Bruins game, it's Jesse Ullinen that will be coming out, and I advertised the Rocket Sports text line 5853 Rocket. It can be used during the show too. It can.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Apparently, I said Joel Armia. It's Joel Armia, of course. Joel Armia and Jesse Ullinen for all our Finnish friends in Thunder Bay.
Yeah, fair enough. We try to get the correct pronunciations on things, right?
Yeah.
Every now and then something slips out.
Yeah.
And with that, I think it's a good time to get to this week's winners and losers.
And now it's time for this week's winners and losers on the Canadiens Connection.
So, Rick, I'm going to let you get started off with your loser, and I'm pretty excited to hear what you have to say about this.
Well, it's hard to even get into this because I'm going to get upset, and I honestly, truly, sincerely thought this was a joke when I saw the picture of when the NHL unveiled their All-Star jerseys. I thought somebody was just messing around. I truly did. No, these are the actual jerseys. They look like something out of the kids section at Walmart or Target. The logo looks silly. The striping down the arms and the stars and the style. They're silly. Apparently, I'm told they're from the Justin Bieber collection. His streetwear collection. This isn't a matter of opinion. If you say you like these, I think you're wrong. Just wrong. They're a singular color, 4 jerseys, white, yellow, sort of burnt red, and a blue. Like I said, the NHL logo is dumb. These are all horrible, atrocious NHL All-Star jerseys. They are the losers of the week.
Yeah, absolutely. And just looking at it in the NHL shop, I think the nameplates on the back are all going to be in lowercase, which makes it worse. I don't know, like, do we need Justin Bieber to design NHL jerseys?
No.
Does Bieber really need to design clothes? I mean, after seeing this, I don't think I'm ever going to have interest. I don't know. Anyways, that's great loser, and I think just a huge miss there. Sometimes you get some good jerseys out of it, but I feel like the past decade, it's just been worse, and this is the icing on the cake.
Yeah.
My loser for this week, and I think this might be a little bit of a callback here. I'm going with Jeff Molson. I think he's been a loser a couple of times previously, if not at least once. And this is in regards to ticket pricing at the Bell Center. Once again, we're going to talk about this. Back in September, there was an article in the Montreal Gazette that was talking about how tickets to the season opener were starting at $225 to be at the very top. I was looking into potentially going into a game this year. It's gone a little bit better, but not much. It's looking like at least $100 minimum after all the additional fees and taxes to be in the very, very top row at the Bell Center. This is a rebuilding team. You don't know how the product's going to look night after night. Charging $100 minimum to be at the very, very top. Some places at the very top actually have an obstructed view as well with those media suites right in front of you, so you get a little bit of a cutoff above your eyes. I think kind of just a shame there. I don't think we should be charging over $100 to be in a top row for any event, quite frankly. Also, this kind of got me thinking, too. One of our Rocket Sports Media colleagues, Mike Raschel, drove 9 hours in a snowstorm to Montreal last week to see a couple games. One of those games was against the Sharks, where Montreal lost to the Sharks while the Sharks were on a long, long losing streak. They put that to an end there, and he saw a game against the Oilers. Again, Montreal did not play very well in that one, and that's another loss. So he spent quite a bit of money on 2 games, traveled all the way to Montreal for not a very good product. On top of that, too, I think I've got to mention the kids here. Thinking about the families, the young families with kids out there that absolutely love the Montreal Canadiens, would love to go to a game, and you're telling me it's going to cost you minimum $100 per ticket just to go to a game, not to mention the prices of everything at the concessions and the parking, everything that goes along with that. It just seems like it's very unattainable for a lot of families at this point. And we saw Montreal visit Ottawa this past week. I believe it's actually cheaper to travel to Ottawa and go to a game. For $100 in Ottawa, you can actually get a decent ticket, not be in the very last row either. You know, maybe in most cases you think about, $100 for a ticket, that's not too bad. But then when you think about, okay, I'm at the very top, 400 section row D, the wall behind me, obstructed view, that's insane. I think we're not giving Jeff Molson enough flack for that. It's just pure greed at this point.
Well, that's I'd agree with that.
Yeah, hopefully I didn't miss any takes on that one, but I think with that, we'll try to look a little bit more positive with our winners of the week.
So, do you want to do yours since I went first last time?
Sure, let's do it. Edmonton Oilers. I actually had these guys as a loser of the week not too long ago because they were just god-awful coming out of the gate. Jack Campbell going on waivers, Stuart Skinner looking awful, and right now they're on a 12-game win streak and back in the playoff picture. So credit where credit's due. The Edmonton Oilers doing a good job putting themselves back in the picture. Skinner's look quite a bit better. New coach Knobloch has come in and really made Edmonton look a lot better. Their systems, I think, are a little bit more simple and certainly paying off there. So the Edmonton Oilers on a 12-game win streak, absolutely crazy, and good to see that a Canadian team and the team with Connor McDavid is actually starting to have some success. Well,
good for them, and we know that Edmonton was looking at Montreal Canadiens goaltending earlier in the season when their goaltending was rough, and now we're told that maybe they want to add a forward. Could they be players in the Sean Monahan sweepstakes? So that's interesting. And on the other hand, as the Oilers have risen, it's been the LA Kings who have been in a tailspin, and I don't know that their issue has been goaltending, but we're told that they may be in the market for a goaltender as the trade deadline approaches. So we'll keep an eye on that. My winner of the week, I saw this headline, and it said, "Former Stanley Cup winner saves person's life at NHL game."
That's pretty crazy.
I'm intrigued, aren't you? I'm intrigued. And then to read the story, I know that guy. I know him. I know him pretty well, actually. This is former Stanley Cup winner Tony Herkus. Tony Herkus is he was a player for the St. Louis Blues. He was drafted in the second round by the Blues, played with the Blues, played with the Quebec Nordiques. Nordiques fans may recognize that name. Played for Dallas. I think that's where he won his Stanley Cup with the Dallas Stars. And a veteran of 758 NHL games. Since then, he has been a scout for a pro scout for the Tampa Bay Lightning since about 2015. And I see Tony every once in a while in press boxes, and he's always a great guy to talk to. Lots of knowledge about hockey. As it happens, Tony is from Thunder Bay, Ontario, my birthplace, and our mothers went to high school together and remained good friends throughout their life. So I saw Tony when birthday parties and things like that growing up, and it's always good to catch up with him in the press box. Well, he was in the press box again on January the 4th in Los Angeles at the Crypto.com arena. It was the Kings versus the Detroit Red Wings. He was there scouting. And there was an NHL employee in the press box. There's always a number of NHL employees. They're either off-ice officials taking statistics. There's sometimes a supervisor of referees, of officiating in the press box. It isn't specific in the report, but it was someone who works for the NHL who was watching the game, doing his job, and enjoying the treats that are available oftentimes for the media. And this time he was enjoying a soft pretzel. Now, this NHL employee began choking, and by all reports, turning a purplish color, and couldn't catch his breath. Tony Herkus sees what's happening. He rushes over, gives this employee the Heimlich maneuver, ejects this piece of pretzel, and the employee was able to then breathe normally. People on the scene said Tony saved his life. Incredible story. Happy to call Tony, an acquaintance, somebody that I've met both personally and professionally, and certainly worthy of my winner of the week.
Yeah, what a great story, too. And I guess big thanks to Tony Herkus for reacting properly and taking care of that situation. So amazing story, and appreciate you bringing that one to us this week, Rick. And with that, let's get to our Habs prospect report.
It's time for the Rocket Report. The Rocket Sports Media Team is your premier source for information about the Laval Rocket, the AHL affiliate of the Montreal Canadiens, as well as Habs prospects playing in the CHL, NCAA, and leagues around the world. Bookmark thn.com/Montreal to follow our comprehensive coverage of Canadiens prospects.
Each and every week, we like to highlight a Montreal Canadiens prospect. And this week, we're going to shine the spotlight on defenseman Dmitry Kostenko, the 87th pick in 2021. That's the third round. He's currently playing in the VHL. I'm going to do my best to pronounce this team, but Ugra Honti Mansisk is the team he's playing for. He's been on a tear recently. Looking at his statistics from the past 5 games, 3 goals, 6 assists, 9 points. His last 10 games, 4 goals, 7 assists, 11 points, plus 10. So he's been playing very, very well over in the VHL. A little bit about his play style. He's certainly an interesting defenseman. He'll need a little bit of refinement, but lots of offensive creativity and willingness to get involved in the play in all 3 zones. He skates pretty well, and I think that this is a prospect that we're not hearing a whole lot about, but it's certainly intriguing. It seems like he's got some very good offensive numbers for sure.
And you say the Canadiens have a defenseman, another defensive prospect. He's a guy who a little bit slight when he was drafted. He's 6'1", 187 now. He's put on a little bit to his frame. Drafted in 2021, third round, 87th overall, as we see, and he's gone through a trade during the season. You mentioned that he's playing in the VHL, called the Supreme Hockey League. That's the equivalent of the AHL in Russia. He spent a few games in the KHL last season, but has been playing mostly in the AHL this year. But as I said, was involved in a traded from Kimmich to Ugra at the end of November. And at Kimmich, he had 5 points in 20 games, which maybe is okay for a defenseman. But as you said, he's gone on quite a tear since the trade. And the last 5 games, 3 goals, 6 assists, 9 points, plus 6. I don't know what's happened to him. But he's getting good ice time, and he's just been on an offensive explosion. So keep him on your radar, Dmitry Kostenko. We certainly will, and we'll check in on him again later in the season.
Absolutely. And on that note, I think it's a good time to welcome contributor Patrick Williams of the ECHL.com and NHL.com to the show. And Rick, I'll send that off to you.
Thanks, Michael. I'm pleased to welcome Patrick Williams back to the Canadiens Connection. As most of you know, Patrick writes about the American Hockey League for NHL.com and the AHL.com. We're also grateful that Patrick's a contributor to Rocket Sports. You'll hear him and see him, actually, on the Rocket Hockey Report with me, Amy Johnson, on our YouTube channel. You're too modest to agree with this, but I consider Patrick the AHL guru. Please welcome this morning, Patrick Williams.
Oh, thank you. I appreciate that. Always good to be back. Oh, and fan club's back too.
The kids love it, yeah. I love that you're here. Our listeners love that you're here, and we appreciate you stopping in with us and giving us an update on prospects, on the Laval Rocket, on the AHL as a whole. And this week we wanted to start right off with a trade. Kent Hughes made a trade for one Filip Cederqvist from the Buffalo Sabres, and in exchange for the infamous future consideration. So for those that don't know, and count myself among them, who is Filip Cederqvist?
Well, first off, the price is right.
Well, that's right.
Future considerations. It's kind of it's a lottery ticket. I think you could almost call it. And so he is he was in the Buffalo system. He was a 5th round pick back in 2019. He comes out of the Swedish system. He came over to North America with some pretty good experience. Came into Rochester last season. Had relatively solid first year in North America. This year, really had a tough start. I mean, Rochester's lineup has kind of been a state of flux. That I think Habs fans can probably relate to this. As the Buffalo Sabres have had their ups and downs, that trickle-down effect hits the lineup in the American League as well. And Rochester's no different. So they've had some lineup issues at different points of the year. So he I think he was somebody that just a little bit, just kind of found himself, a little bit on the outside looking in. And this is I think a fresh start for both sides. Only 23 years old, so that part's good. And generally speaking, Swedish players tend to be well-rounded in terms of the training that they get coming up through the system. He came up through the I can never say this name properly, but it's Växjö, in the Swedish system. So they have a good program. He was able to go through there. Played in Djurgården's his last season before coming to North America. So he has a pretty good background in that sense. I think especially with the Rockets, given what their injury situation is, absolutely just getting hammered by injuries. You can certainly put a competent forward with some good experience into the lineup to fill a spot and see where it goes from here. I mean, at worst, you've spent nothing, and at best, maybe you have a player that has some room at least for a little bit of growth.
Yeah, as you said, he played in the SHL, playing against men at Djurgården, 32 points in 49 games for them. Then came over to Rochester, and last season 20 points in 55 games. From what I've read, his calling is his shot, his physical play. Jeff Wool talked about the fact that he didn't make any mistakes in his debut with the Rocket. Like the way he played on the forecheck. He's got good size, 6'3", and knows how to use his size. and seemed to fit right in. He said he was a bit shocked by the trade, but that he was happy that he was going to the Montreal organization, happy that they wanted him, and happy that he can now play as a on the home side in Place Belle, because he remarked on what a difficult arena that is to play while you're a member of the opposition. So as you said, injuries in Laval, some call-ups. Mitchell Stevens, as we know, has been up with the Canadiens for a while. Joshua Waugh up. So this seems like a body, but as you said, very young and still has some potential, and sounds like he's got a good background to fit into Laval for the time being. The trade was billed as future considerations. What does that, for those for our listeners, what does that mean?
Usually it doesn't mean much,
right?
Quite honestly, it's I've always kind of said it's a way to sort of soften the blow of saying we traded you for nothing, right? Occasionally I think there could be a little bit of a maybe a handshake agreement down the road that, okay, you helped us out here. Down the road we'll try to help you out if the situation arises. But for the most part, it's just I think this is a case where for Rochester and Buffalo, they're able to kind of simplify their lineup and also help out Laval's lineup and give a player fresh opportunity to get a new opportunity with a club where after things I think I maybe stagnate a little bit for him in the Buffalo system.
So someone who has taken full advantage of his opportunity this season, and that's one Logan Mailloux, a 20-year-old defenseman. Remember in 2021, the number 31 pick by Marc Bergevin of that draft in the London Knights environment for the last 3 years, and then comes to the Laval Rocket, and yes, a bit of a cloud there, but he has really been adopted by the fans of the Rocket, by Canadiens fans. 22 points in 35 games, playing the top pairing with Arber Xhekaj and Logan Mailloux. And we heard last week the Place Belle chanting Mailloux, Mailloux, as he was introduced now as a member of the AHL's All-Star Classic. He's going to the All-Star game. What can you tell us about Logan Mailloux's season?
Yeah. Obviously he comes in as a first-round pick. So expectations are going to be high anywhere, and especially if you're in Montreal. The thing I've been impressed with is how he's been able to really kind of just come into the lineup and look like he belongs right off the bat. I find that, with young defensemen especially, that's one of the biggest challenges, is especially a player that's played junior. They found a comfort level a long time ago at the junior level, right? And now you bring them up to the AHL level, and it's like, whoa, this is a lot faster, a lot more experience, a lot stronger, and how do I adapt to that also, and how do I kind of bring what's made me successful into the pro level? So for him, the fact he's been able to produce offensively, I think that's really encouraging. I like that for a player. I've said this before. I like that for a player in general as well. That I always view that as sort of positive reinforcement, where if they're you're trying to really round out their defensive game or their two-way game, but if they're getting some points and feeling like that, they're contributing offensively, I think it helps sell the message, in terms of, how, we hear this all the time, like, how, good defensive play will lead to offensive opportunities. And so for him, I think that's the encouraging part. And then you mentioned Jack Guy, right? Like he came down on December 4th, and really, the two have been together, and it's just you could see the confidence level, and I guess just the poise that pairing has brought really to the entire club. But you notice them right off the bat, and especially with a guy like Jack Guy out there, like you got to keep your head up if you're an opposing forward, and I think just really gives the Rocket an element that they certainly did not have at the start of the season. I mean that's a big tough physical pairing. I mean Mailloux already 6'3", 220. So he's more than physically capable at this level. So I'm really impressed so far. Like he's further along than I thought he'd be, to be quite honest. Usually that first year for a defenseman at this level could be a little bumpy, especially with a club that's had some issues. But for him, it's been a relatively, I think, pretty smooth path so far. And obviously to get the recognition of being an all-star, there's a little bit of the little bonus on top of everything.
Well, something else that the Laval Rocket didn't have at the beginning of the season was necessarily confidence in their goaltending tandem. And Jakub Dobas has had some ups and downs, particularly at the beginning of the season. That was expected. He's a rookie goaltender, making the adjustment to the AHL game, and didn't quite work out with Strauss-Mann. And then Kazimir Kaskisuo was brought in on a PTO, and everything has kind of calmed down. Kaskisuo winning his 3 starts. Dobas has been very good. And I think part of it is Kaskisuo is a big personality, has his YouTube channel. He's taken some of the spotlight away from Dobas, and that's a good thing. Now, you were on the Rocket Hockey Report a couple weeks ago with Amy Johnson, and you did a deep dive into Kaskisuo. We won't go there, but just talk about what you've seen over his 3 starts and how that's affected the Rocket team as a whole.
Well, it's that calm that you talk about. It really makes me think, well, why didn't they do this sooner? Right? I mean, you went into the season with like a rookie in Dobas and a second-year goalie in Strauss-Mann who had limited experience at the AHL level, and it just doesn't benefit either the goaltenders or the team as a whole, right? Like. And the problems trying to feed off each other, and you could see that early on there, especially the first 6 weeks or so of the regular season. It wasn't working out. So you bring a guy like Kaskisuo in. He came back 2 years in Sweden. Strangely enough, I was never able to get a good answer from anybody why he was still available in December, but he was, and they brought him in, and he's just he adds that confidence, right? Like if you're a young player like a Mailloux or even a Jack Guy or any of the young players especially, right? Like if you make a mistake, it's not necessarily going to end up in the back of your net, and I think that's huge for the confidence across the board. And he's been a huge addition already. I think just both within the games and just overall in the roster, just kind of just giving them a little bit of a fallback plan if Dobas falters, just so I think it was a smart move. I just if I was the Rocket, I guess I would have liked it sooner.
Yeah, I agree. Coaches seem to be pulling their goalies earlier and earlier these days. And on Thursday night, we saw Marty St. Louis pull Caden Primo for the extra attacker with about 8 minutes left in the game. The Canadiens were down 5-1 to the Senators. However, doing one better, we have to turn to the laboratory of ideas being the AHL, and one Joel Bouchard, former head coach of the Laval Rocket. And now, of course, head coach with the Syracuse Crunch. And in a game with Utica, Joel Bouchard did something I've never seen before. And before I get your comments on it, I'll play the play-by-play by the voice of the Utica Comets. That's one, Jason Ashaya.
This one goes through the seam. Schmelzer's backhander from 150 feet away. Scores! They've tied the game. Short-handed. Can you believe it? Schmelzer from 150 feet away looped the puck down the ice into the empty net. Keep in mind, it was a 6-on-3 advantage for Syracuse. Well, I gotta say, add that to the book. I have never seen that before. And I've watched a lot of hockey games in my life.
Well, Jason says he's never seen it before. I've never seen it before. He said it was a 6-on-3 advantage for Syracuse there, and a shorthanded goal scored by Utica. Can you set the scene and explain this? Because this is one of the more bizarre plays I've ever seen.
Well, he hasn't seen it, and I haven't seen it, and you haven't seen it. I think between the three of us, we've seen a lot of hockey in our day, and none of us have seen it. So, he spoke with the media after the game, and he had said something to the effect of, it's something that he had considered in the past, and he was looking for the right opportunity. I guess that was the right opportunity, at least going into it. I think it's even a little bit of extra salt in the wound that it was a backhander, kind of from the a little bit above the top of the circles in the Utica zone, and it kind of just he hit kind of right down the between the uprights there, and
Ryan Schmelzer scores shorthanded. But to set the scene, this was not the end of the game.
Yes,
this was the first period. Syracuse was up 2-1. They were leading Utica. And Syracuse had a power play. Then they got, then there was another call on Utica, 2 men down. And at that point, in the first period, leading 2-1, Joel Bouchard decided to pull his goaltender for an extra attacker, giving him a 6-on-3, as Jason described, a 6-on-3 advantage. A little embarrassing that Utica gets the tying goal there, being down 3-on-6. Just bizarre, wasn't it?
Yeah, I didn't. I was watching the game at the time. I didn't understand it. I still don't understand it. Certainly, I mean, I guess the stakes are fairly low in the sense it's mid-season. It was early. You did have time to kind of recover from that. But for me, I don't know. I thought it was just a strange move, and I'm not sure that it needed to be done at that time. I mean, it wasn't as if like Syracuse, was a team that was, mired in maybe a 10 game losing streak and a slump, or, desperate for looking at any sort of spark. I mean, this was a team, they're second in the North Division. They've kind of been chugging along for a good portion of the season now. And it just seems, the timing just seems strange to me. And it still does. So I wish I had a better explanation for it. But I really don't. So Joel Bouchard makes this move. What do you think? Kevin Dineen's pretty experienced coach on the other side for Utica. What do you think's going through the mind of Kevin Dineen? Well, I mean, Kevin Dineen he's a fiery coach.
Yeah.
The two of them are, they're very similar in that regard. So, I mean, if you're Utica, it was a game where, maybe your team's a little flat. You're like, okay, well, this is an opportunity here to make something out of, would otherwise obviously be, kind of potentially a really bad situation. You're like you said, you're down 2-1. It's a 5-on-3, and that now, that now you have an opportunity with an empty net there, and all it took was just a backhander. So yeah, it gives you some life, and Utica's, they've had a tough go of it. I mean, they're on an 8-game point streak right now, but it's been a difficult haul for the Comets for much of the season so far. So a little bit of life. I mean, as it was, they only had 17 shots in the game, so they were kind of flat to come out, and so. If I had to put myself in Kevin Dineen's mind, I would imagine that's what he was probably thinking, like, okay, well, this is something. This is at least a potential spark where, we don't really have much going for us right now.
Well, it's crazy. And I'm glad that you're here to explain that. Maybe this, for your next visit, we'll do a wild and wacky segment a la Marv Albert. And if we can find another one of these crazy plays. Listen, Patrick, it's always a pleasure to have you here on the Canadiens Connection. If folks are looking to, and you should be looking to follow Patrick Williams on X, you can find him P. Williams AHL on Twitter, on X. Patrick, thanks once again for joining us here on the Canadiens Connection.
Well, thank you. Always a pleasure. Always fun to come on.
And thank you very much to Patrick Williams for giving us that update. And Rick, I appreciate you taking over there for a little bit.
No problem. Patrick's he's a regular contributor at Rocket Sports. You'll see him with Amy Johnson on our YouTube channel, and he checks in here every few weeks for the Canadiens Connection to give us a very comprehensive AHL report.
And did you know that on top of all the other things we do, we're actually taking care of the hockey news for the QMJHL? And this week, we put out a brand new article from our contributor, Jeremy, who actually had an exclusive interview with QMJHL Commissioner Mario
Cecchini, yeah.
Cecchini, sorry, I don't know why I was fumbling there. But amazing interview there, and we recommend that you check that one out.
Yeah, it was a great interview. A new commissioner, Mayor's a new commissioner, will be celebrating his first anniversary in March. The Q has made some major changes this year. They had the policy on fighting, they had a name change, and there's more to come. So a great interview by Jeremy.
Absolutely. So if you want to check out all of our content about Canadiens prospects, you can head over to thn.com/Montreal. And if you want to find the best English language coverage of the Quebec Maritimes Junior Hockey League, head over to thn.com/QMJHL. And we will end this segment with a little bit of hockey news and notes. There was a list put out about the top 10 least efficient forwards in the league. So the most expensive cost per point. Rick, I'm seeing 2 Montreal Canadiens on this list, and I'm seeing 1 player that could have been a Montreal Canadien on this list. So, of course, leading the way on number 1 is the New York Ranger in Barclay Goodrow, coming in at about $728K per point. And then if you go down the list, you see Josh Anderson, $458K per point. Go a little bit lower, number 10, Gallagher, $433K per point. And right in the middle of them, number 8, one Pierre-Luc Dubois, the Los Angeles Kings, $447K per point. Perhaps a dodged bullet there.
Well, and absolutely, certainly a dodge bullet. If it was up to Canadiens fans, certainly Dubois would have been a Montreal Canadien, a bad point per contract rate for Dubois. We also notice former Montreal Canadien Delorier at $538,000 per point, currently playing with Philadelphia. And we also know that fans were crying out for Jonathan Huberdeau, who is also on this list at $456,000 per point. So an interesting list. Canadiens are the only team to have 2 members. Consider them bad contracts, both Gallagher and Josh Anderson. An interesting metric here, and we just thought it was a little fun to bring it to you.
Yeah, absolutely. I think just one other thing I'll point out here is you look at Barclay Goudreau at number 1, Nick Delorier at number 3. I think those are guys with very different roles on their respective teams, not necessarily the guys you depend on to get points. So, yeah, and like you said, a couple of Montreal Canadiens on this list, a couple guys that fans were hoping to be Montreal Canadiens on this list, and perhaps some dodged bullets there. So we wanted just to talk about that for a little bit. And with that, I think it's a good time to get to our first break. We'll hear a message from our sponsors, DraftKings, and then it's the Big Topic segment. Stay with us. This is the Canadiens Connection podcast here on Rocket Sports Radio.
We know hockey games move fast, but with DraftKings Sportsbook, an official sports betting partner of the NHL, you can score faster than anything happening on the ice. This week, new customers can bet $5 and get $200 instantly in bonus bets. Maybe you want to make a bet on 5 different players who are going to score a goal tonight. The opportunities are endless on DraftKings Sportsbook. There are so many different combinations, opportunities, specials, parlays, straight up money line bets, you name it. There's so many ways to play on DraftKings Sportsbook. So download the DraftKings Sportsbook app with the code THPN. New customers bet just $5 on the NHL and get $200 instantly in bonus bets. Only on DraftKings Sportsbook with code THPN. The crown is yours. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER or visit www.1800gambler.net. In New York, call 877-8-HOPE-NY or text HOPE-NY 467-369. In Connecticut, help is available for problem gambling. Call 888-789-7777 or visit ccpg.org. Please play responsibly. On behalf of Boot Hill Casino and Resort in Kansas. 21 plus age varies by jurisdiction. Void in Ontario. Bonus bets expire 168 hours after issuance. See dkng.com/hockey for eligibility and deposit restrictions, terms, and responsible gaming resources. NHL and the NHL Shield are registered trademarks of the National Hockey League. Copyright NHL 2024. All rights reserved.
Welcome back to the Canadiens Connection podcast here on Rocket Sports Radio. I'm Michael Spinella. You can find me on Twitter at the Spinella, and with me in the studio is our president and founder of Rocket Sports, Rick Stevens. You can follow him on Twitter at Rocket Sports. Also make sure that you're following at Habs Connection on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram, and you can check out the website canadiensconnection.fm. Just a reminder here to also make sure that you're subscribed to the Canadiens Connection podcast in your favorite player or on your favorite podcasting app. That way you never miss a single episode. And Rick, we have some present, some future, and some past to go through for Montreal Canadiens prospects. Going through a little bit of everything, and then we have an interview as Amy Johnson's going to step in towards the end of this segment. But how about we start here on the present, what we currently have in the system. How does that sound to you?
That sounds great to me.
So this past week, The Athletic released their ranking of top NHL players and prospects under the age of 23 years old. And, well, let's see how the Canadiens prospects ranked. Scrolling through, it's taken me a little while here to scroll through. I know number 1 here, it's Connor Bedard, of course. In that second tier, it's they're calling it the elite tier. No Habs there. Tier 3, bubble elite or star. No Habs here. Okay. Tier number 5, the bubble NHL All-Star, and they have Juraj Slafkovsky right there, so that's going to start off for the Canadiens. Mentions that his production has not come through yet, but there is a belief that once he gets going that he will be pretty effective, and of course he's taking on a bigger role on the Montreal Canadiens this year, mostly playing on that top line. Let's see if there's any other Canadians. Okay, Tier 6. Okay, we have both Caulfield and Reinbacher here. Tier 7, Kirby Dach, kind of the middle lineup player, bubble player, makes sense. And then we have like half a dozen players here in Tier 8. So what are your thoughts about this rankings? It seems like pretty high on Slafkovsky. I thought Cole Caulfield certainly could have been a little bit higher in this, but nevertheless, this is a pretty interesting thing to go through and see how Montreal's prospects ranks up against a lot of other teams.
Yeah, absolutely. And these lists are fascinating. I should say they're pretty hard to do. This one is from Corey Pronman, and he's been doing this a while. He has a focus just on prospects. So he's able not only to rank the prospects in each team, but rank the prospects overall throughout hockey, really. And we know that different people have different definitions about what includes a prospect. Corey, every year it's the same. This definition is a player must be 22 years old or younger as of January 1st, 2024 to qualify. So that's the best players under 23 who are in the NHL or haven't yet made it. And so I think it's fair. I'd quibble with a couple of the Canadiens ratings. I might have. Would I have Cole Caulfield ahead of Juraj Slafkovsky? Maybe, although I think he's looking at the potential for Slafkovsky. Reinbacher might be a little high. I might have Kirby Dach ahead of him. I might have Caden Gooley higher. Logan Mailloux maybe a little bit higher. I think Joshua Waugh is too high. And it goes on, to Sean Farrell at number 165. Overall, Logan Mailloux 148. It's interesting. However, I guess when I look at this and you look at where the Canadiens rank compared to the rest of the prospects or the rest of the under 23s, that's where you get a little depressed, I think. The top one on this list is Juraj Slafkovsky, and that's number 20. 25, Cole Caulfield. 47, David Reinbacher. The Montreal Canadiens have had the first overall pick and the 5th overall pick the last 2 years, and the best that they can do is the 20th ranked player under 23, and then it drops to Reinbacher, who's at 47. And you get a little envious of of course, Chicago with Bedard at 1. New Jersey has 2 Hugheses in the top 10. Tim Stützle, who the Canadiens ran into, or in particular, Brendan Gallagher ran into this week at number 3. Adam Fantilli from the last draft at number 4. Leo Carlson at number 5, and then if you don't want to hear this, turn this volume down. Number 6, Matvei Michkov with the Philadelphia Flyers. He has ranked Matvei Michkov number 6 at under 23 players, and David Reinbacher at 47. Now, listen, these aren't set in stone. Corey Pronman's not always right, but you have to wonder, is he going to be a little off on Matvei Michkov? Is he going to be sixth best? Is he going to be 3rd best? Is he going to be 12th best? I don't think he's going to fall to 47, and I don't think that David Reinbacher is going to come up from 47 to be the best player, of the two. That's where I think as you go through, it gets a little discouraging for Canadiens fans. Luke Hughes, number 7, as I said, there's 2 Hugheses in there, and then Moritz Seider at number 8. So, yes, the Canadiens are in a rebuild. Yes, they have benefited from some high draft choices, but they have to start hitting. Nick Bobrov, this is to you.
Yeah.
They have to start hitting on those draft choices because, as we see, they're now moving into that mushy middle where they're not in the bottom 5 anymore, and the draft picks are going to be more critical that you hit on because they don't have the choice of one of those top 5 picks.
Yeah, absolutely. And my kind of takeaway here, is there were a lot of players in that 8th tier that are projecting to be kind of middle of the lineup. And I think, there's a lot of good prospects that could turn out to be NHL players, but certainly a lack of firepower up front because we don't get our first Habs prospect until tier 5, which is quote unquote the bubble NHL All-Star. And that's Juraj Slafkovsky, who we're yet to see turn into that. I think bubble is the important word here. So I think as we look towards the future here, it's going to be very important for Montreal to maybe beef this up a little bit.
So are you talking about a point-a-game player?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
And I think Kent Hughes was asked about this. We'll get to that pretty soon, but let's take a look at the future. So it's the kind of the middle of the season here. The general manager, Kent Hughes, had a media availability, and he shared some views on the Habs season so far, prospect development, plan for the trade deadline, and how he's going to use his assets to acquire more talent. One of the things that I thought kind of stood out here was when he was asked about Laval, and particularly the coaching from Laval. We do have some audio for it, but there are a lot more prospects in Laval this season, which is great. I think there have been points in the season where the prospects haven't been playing a ton. And before we get to this audio from Kent Hughes talking about the coaching of Laval, did you have anything else you wanted to add to tee this up?
Well, I think it's very interesting because the question asked was specifically about JF Uhl and how he's done as a coach in Laval. And listen to his answer.
He's done a great job. The coaching staff and the development group are there pretty consistently, whether it's Scott Pellerin or Adam or Paul Byron and Frankie Bouillon, working with the coaches too. And we've seen the progression individually, right? Like even Arbor in his time there, we sent him there to work on his game, and we're seeing that Logan's taken a real step. And I think Arbor's presence has probably helped Logan with that. Collectively, the team's winning, and they live our injuries and their injuries, right? So if we have an injury, we take a player away. If they have an injury, if you have both, they deal with depleted rosters. I know early on goaltending was a factor, and that seems to have stabilized too. So they're on a heck of a run, and we're hopeful that will continue, and the players will have the benefit of having a playoff run.
Do you see where he ended up there? He talked about goaltending. He talked about a run to the playoff. What was he asked? He was asked specifically about JF Uhl, and he said, he's done a good job. Pivot. Get off of JF Uhl. And he goes to the development group, and he mentions by name Scott Pellerin, Adam Nicholas, Paul Byron, Frankie Bouillon, and how the development group has done a great job going down there and helping to develop Logan Mailloux and with Arbor Jacki going, it was very interesting. He's not going to say that he didn't do a good job because that's going to cause headlines, but he didn't state and he didn't elaborate about JF Uhl. Why is that important? JF Uhl is in the last year of his contract. JF Uhl, not known as a development coach per se. He talks about focusing on winning. He talks about focusing on pleasing the fans. So that's something that not saying that they've made a decision about the future of the coaching staff in Laval, just saying that's something to watch. And I just thought it was really curious how quick he pivoted off of JF Uhl.
Yeah, so that clip was like a little bit over 50 seconds long. I think about 5 seconds was about JF Uhl. The rest of it was about everything else in Laval. And, I think it's nice that Kent Hughes brings up the playoffs, and he brings up that the goaltending has been improving. Jakub Dobis, I think, has been a huge reason for that. But like you said, he certainly pivots there. And throughout his media availability, I think he pivoted quite a bit.
Yeah, for sure.
As we approach the trade deadline here, I think it's fair to say Montreal should be sellers. Sounds like Kent Hughes isn't really in a rush to make a trade, though. He was asked about his commitment to Sean Monahan. One of the things that I think was speculated upon with Sean Monahan coming and re-signing with Montreal for 1 year is that he would get traded at the trade deadline. to a playoff contender. He certainly has a lot of opportunities to be showcased here in Montreal, playing an elevated role, and I think he's been great in Montreal for sure. I see Sean Monahan on a lot of those trade bait boards, but what do you think Kent Hughes is trying to say here with Sean Monahan?
Well, he's again playing the cards close to his chest. If he says, yes, I'm anxious to trade Sean Monahan, yes, I have had a deal with Sean Monahan to trade him, then then the general managers who might be interested are going to offer less and think that he's desperate to trade Sean Monahan. If he plays it that, no, we could keep him, we could keep it, then the value goes up because he's not so desperate. So don't take everything you hear from Kent Hughes at face value. Remember his words, and he was very clear. As a former agent, I plan to leverage the media in the role of the general manager of the Montreal Canadiens. Remember that all the time. He's not only speaking to fans to answer a question, answer the question he's been asked. He's using the media to send a message to other GMs and maybe agents and those kinds of things. And he was asked specifically about Sean Monahan because it was Darren Dreger this week on Inside Trading. I have the quote from Dreger. Dreger said, "You got to go back to the offseason when the Canadiens signed Sean Monahan. They had an agreement at that point that said, we will trade you when the time is right to a contending team or to a team of your choice. Nothing has changed there. In fact," and Dreger goes on, "in fact, I wouldn't be surprised if Sean Monahan is amongst the first forwards to get dealt before the deadline." Is that reasonable? Well, remember that Sean Monahan signed for a discount. And yes, he said all the right things about liking to play in Montreal, but he'd also like to play for a contender. So did that discussion happen? Kent Hughes was asked specifically about that report.
I think more generally, Harpen, was really like when you talk about signing a player to a one-year deal and convincing a player to come to a team on that like ours that's in a phase of building. As a player, I think you evaluate it and look at what the opportunity is, because you're coming in trying to reset right after a number of years of injury-riddled seasons where he hasn't been able to play, to be able to reset, but also to be able to play. So, the kind of more open-ended situation with Sean was come here, play, let's see where we are when we get to the deadline. And it's still the case.
Word salad. He danced around. He didn't want to say that. He didn't want to agree with that report. But he didn't deny it either. And the way he danced around, I think it's clear that the answer is yes. Yes, there was that was part of the discussion that, listen, Sean, if you come here, you'll get lots of playing time. You'll get to prove yourself. You'll be showcased. And then we'll do our best to trade you by the deadline. I think it's fair to say that. The other interesting part of that quote was that Kent Hughes, he doesn't like to say rebuild. He doesn't like to say those kinds of words, but he said, a team like ours in a phase of building. So a different spin on the rebuild.
Yeah, that's a good catch there, Rick. I actually didn't hear that one at first, but that just sounds like a fancier way of rebuilding. But nonetheless, Ken Hughes kind of dancing around a little bit there. Something else that was talked about was adding talent. If that's something that he would, maybe if there's a surplus that Montreal has in some areas, you see maybe there's a bit of a logjam on defense, or he mentioned that there are quite a few draft picks that this organization has over the next few years. Would he go and look to add some talent? That was something that was brought up as well. And I think another brilliant question, I'm not sure who asked this question, but Ken Hughes was asked, do you think the Habs need a point-per-game player? And it was brought up that the last time they had one was one Alex Kovalev, and Ken Hughes had kind of an interesting answer for this one as well.
I mean, I don't really think of it in terms of a point-per-game player. I do hear that a lot in this market. Like I can think of, may be obvious for me because I represented him, but Patrice Bergeron, I don't think he was ever a point-per-game player, and he's going to be a first-ballot Hall of Famer. So, pardon me?
There were guys on that team who played with him.
Yeah, probably in large part because of him. So, listen, we're looking for players that can help us. Are we looking to add offense to this group? Yeah, no question about it. It's, we're talking about our D group and having a lot of depth and trying to rebalance the ledger. If we're able to do that and either use young players that we have that we feel are, there's just a logjam in a position, or draft picks. We've accumulated a lot of draft picks, right? We've got 22 picks over the next 2 years. Do I expect that we'll use all 22? In a perfect world, no. In a perfect world, we'll use some of those picks as we've done in the past, to get a Doc, a Newhook, or whatever. And, as we continue to move forward, we'll have more flexibility in terms of financial flexibility under the cap to evaluate things.
Fascinating. And again, we're playing longer clips than we normally do, and that's because we want to give you the full context of what was said. Again, this is something, and I believe it was Stu Cowan that said, do the Canadiens need a point-per-game player? And then interjected that the Bruins had those players during the tenure of Patrice Bergeron. But it was, as you said, a good question. And again, this is something that the general manager can't say, yes, we're desperate for that kind of player. How could he do that? And then looks, it would hamper his negotiations if he's going to acquire that kind of player. He actually touched on the Cutter-Gauthier trade, but is that a impact player? Is he about to be an impact player, a point-per-game player? And the Canadiens were offered a Cutter-Gauthier more than once, as you talked about last week. But this reference to Patrice Bergeron is I think it's a bit of a red herring. No, Patrice Bergeron was not a point-per-game player, but as Stu said, there was players around him who were, and a really weak answer from Hughes saying, well, they were point-per-game players in large part because of Patrice Bergeron. All right, but you still need those players. So if Nick Suzuki is the comparable, and he's going to be the Patrice Bergeron, and he's not going to get to be a point-per-game player, you still need some snipers around him. And he went on to concede that they're still looking for offense, and he talked about the 2022 draft. He said their first three picks were forwards, Slavkovsky, Filip Machar, and Owen Beck. Now, I don't know that each of those players might have a place in the Canadiens lineup. I don't think there's anybody there that's a point-per-game player. And the other reason why the whole Patrice Bergeron reference is a bit weak is because the Stanley Cup, the Bruins Stanley Cup, where Bergeron played a key factor, was back in 2011. Jacques Martin called them the Big Heavy. That's how the Bruins won. That doesn't win in the NHL these days. There's a lot more offensive talent, and players and teams have multiple players who can contribute offensively. So I think, again, he's dodging the question. He's dancing, and he's leveraging the media so that he doesn't upset his negotiations or focusing in on draft picks or those kinds of things. And he said, we're not going to use all of our 22 picks. We're going to put them together for a trade, as we've done before. So don't take everything Kent Hughes says at face value, because he has different reasons for saying what he does.
Yeah, absolutely. I guess to the point of Nick Suzuki, is Suzuki going to be a perpetual Selke candidate? Probably not a reasonable expectation at this point. Suzuki's still a very good player, but definitely I think we can all agree that they need that firepower. They need at least 1 point per game player, and I just don't feel like that's currently in the system. So I think it's time to take a look at the past a little bit. If we want to go all the way back to 1995, the Montreal Canadiens selected in the draft future star of the hit show Shoresy, Terry Ryan, in the first round, 8th overall. Of course, as a Canadiens prospect, Ryan played 126 games with the Fredericton Canadiens of the AHL. At the time, that was the AHL affiliate for the Canadiens. He went on and played 8 games with the Montreal Canadiens. And this week, Ryan suited up for the Newfoundland Growlers of the ECHL at the age of 47. So I'm going to go ahead and welcome Amy Johnson to the show, as well as Chris Ballard, the play-by-play broadcaster for the Newfoundland Growlers, and along with Rick Stevens. And I'm looking forward to this interview.
Well, thank you very much for that, Michael. Very happy to be here in the studio with Rick for another special guest. And this is one I'm really delighted to get to welcome this guest into the studio and have a chat with him today, because it's been far too long since we've gotten a chance to sit down and talk with the one and only Chris Ballard, the play-by-play broadcaster for the Newfoundland Growlers, the ECHL affiliate of the Toronto Maple Leafs. Chris, it's great to talk to you, and welcome to the Canadiens Connection.
Yeah, guys, thanks so much for having me. Yeah, it's been an awful long time. My final season with Brampton. Well, actually, even prior to that, because when I left Brampton in 17 after the 17-18 season, but they were Ottawa affiliates at that time. So I guess we last would have really connected in the 16-17 season. So yeah, wonderful to reconnect with you guys. Well,
it was always fun to talk to you on the road as we were following the Brampton Beast, and you always had great stories and great things to say. Listen, we're here today because last Sunday, I think all eyes of the hockey world were on St. John's once again, and because of one Terry Ryan. And if we can just start today by who is Terry Ryan? We know him as a podcaster, and he has a podcast on the Hockey Podcast Network, the same as we do. We know him from the Letterkenny and the Shoresy spinoff, and but he was also, way back when, a first-round pick of the Montreal Canadiens. Why don't you just take us through the background of Terry Ryan, and I guess also why he is a prominent personality in St. John's?
No, for sure. All valid questions. So, Terry, the 8th, I don't know. I mean, I haven't reread his bio since I wrote it a couple of days ago. 8th overall in 1995.
Yeah.
And really a larger than life personality. Like I when I was growing up as a hockey fan here in St. John's, I did so right at the time when Terry, I was I think 8 years old when Terry got drafted. So high. He was the highest drafted Newfoundlander of all time. So, as he went about his pro career, and again, me being a hockey fan, watching minor pro hockey in St. John's, he came through as a member of the Fredericton Canadiens, became a member of the St. John's Maple Leafs, and played here. And, and from there, you knew that he was unable to really achieve the level he wanted in his pro career. And then he's always been a figure in St. John's and in the Newfoundland and Labrador hockey scene, whether he was, as to his own admission, stocking shelves for Red Bull. You always kind of knew what Terry was up to a little bit. And, for how the story came around to the Growlers with Terry in particular, and how it found its way to me. So we had played a 3-3 against the Adirondack Thunder this past week. And this was Saturday night. I had just finished writing my game notes for Sunday's game. Normally I get a little bit of a heads up if we're signing someone, or maybe our affiliate, the Toronto Marlies, are sending someone down. I didn't get any heads up. So I wake up on Sunday morning, the day of the game, to a text message from my color guy, not even someone from Growlers management, because the story had clearly blown up overnight.
Yeah.
And I learned that, oh my God, is this real? Are the Growlers signing Terry Ryan? And opened Twitter, it was everywhere. So I'm like, well, I guess we are. So for there, I confirmed the details I needed to confirm to write the aforementioned bio and add him to the back end of our system so that, TR could suit up again for the Growlers, making his first pro appearance since 2003. So it happened really quickly, and I got a lot of text messages from a lot of people asking the exact same. It's like, is this for real? Is this a publicity stunt? Well, no, but like the byproduct is some wonderful publicity, but it was really a whirlwind day that just started. With a text message like, have you seen this blow up on the internet? And I kind of caught up from there. It was really a wild day.
Well, maybe you could describe for us, kind of as providing a bit of backstory, describe kind of the unique set of circumstances that set this up. That a 47-year-old Terry Ryan is going to come and return to pro hockey and play a game and sign with the Growlers. What pieces fell into place or kind of got jostled out of place for this unique situation to even happen?
All of the above really seemed to happen in order for the perfect set of circumstances to take place to allow Terry to unironically be in the Growlers lineup. So the Growlers had been, as any team is, as you enter the unofficial second half of the season, you have your own fair share of guys who are banged up. And the Growlers had a few injured players, but I would say maybe even the prior 2 weeks before this game, the Growlers had been decimated by a stomach bug that had gone around the area. I had even missed a game the week prior, and as a broadcaster, you never miss games.
That never happens.
Never. So, it had gone around, and it had finally caught up to our locker room. Like even on Saturday night, I had heard we had maybe 5 healthy bodies. I don't know if that number will be stretched over time, but very few guys were really healthy and good to go. So typically, the first call you would make if you need a new player is you would look on your own ECHL waiver wire. You would see if there's any guys who maybe have been released or guys playing in the SPHL, the Southern Professional Hockey League, to see. But this is when you're on a rock in the North Atlantic and you need a guy in 12 hours time, you have to go to your next option. So for the Growlers for a long time, that had just been your local senior ranks. That's the highest ranking amateur hockey being played in your area. So typically, that's where the Growlers had dipped into that well and had come up with real strong players in the past. Jordan Escott's a regular player now for Newfoundland, had unbelievable fill-ins. Dan Cadigan being another one. So really, normally, but we uncovered through this circumstance that there's a Hockey Canada imposed date of January 10th, where any senior level, or for that matter, junior level players who play any professional games basically omit themselves from their own seasons from having done so. So not sure if the search for players included trying to go down that route and guys saying, no, I'm not throwing my year away for you. Or if the Growlers had the sense to say, okay, well, what's the next pool we get to pull from? And then you have to get really creative. Because I had spoken again with my color guy, Ben Murphy. He was like, Chris, like, you realize I may have been the next phone call after Terry? Like guys who may have played senior hockey or maybe just got out of junior hockey in your area who are somehow still in game shape. Like you're really trying to meet a very specific set of criteria. And one guy who met that criteria was Terry Ryan, still in good shape, clearly knows the game well. Like you can't fake that, through being drafted into the NHL. And then I think the brass with the Growlers kind of stepped back to say like, man, this could be such a cool thing if we could pull this off. And have him in, and that's what I mean when I say unironically, because like we needed a warm body. We needed someone to come in and play, like literally probably take some shifts in this game. And I can't speak on behalf of management, don't get me wrong. I'm just a fly on the wall for a lot of cool conversations. And from there, he was in the starting lineup then. And like the roar in the building was unbelievable. And clearly he did what he did late in the third period. But like he got a regular shift in the third. Sure, the game was a little out of hand at that point, but it really was a unique set of circumstances that led to him being able to get into the lineup. And it just made everyone proud. And like really the buzz was something I hadn't seen since the Growlers had won the Kelly Cup in 2019. It was really that impactful.
Well, and Terry said after the game, all the stars aligned. All the stars had to align for him to get there. And maybe Terry, an honest guy, an honest hard worker. The stars didn't necessarily align for the hockey career that he had mapped out for himself. As you said, he was a first round pick by the Canadiens in 1995. He did get into 8 NHL games with the Montreal Canadiens. No goals, no assists, no points, but 36 minutes in penalties. And he, as you said, a member of the Fredericton Canadiens. And I was talking to Patrick Williams, who covers the AHL, and he said, who would have imagined that an alum of the Fredericton Canadiens would appear in a professional game in 2024? But there he was, and embraced the situation, and he did a pre-game speech to his teammates that we saw on social media. Maybe just talk about that game day, him in the locker room, him taking the warm-up, and then, as you said, it was he had a couple of eventful shifts ending with a fight.
Sure did.
Maybe just talk about the game day.
Yeah, even just leading into the game, us staff, you get to the rink pretty early, and I think I was at the rink particularly early just to be around it all, because you really could feel a different energy. You can't put your finger on exactly what it was, but there was definitely something special. And then you hear the music kind of emitting from down in the locker room area, and then you're like, oh, that must be Terry. I guess he's here. It's like what you'd swear he was Michael Jordan or something, but really, it's just a legendary local player. But and then, everyone was locked in to warm up just to get a glimpse of what he was. And sure, he looked like a 47-year-old player out there, but still, he's Terry Ryan. And you'd swear he was plucked right out of 1995 again. It really was a surreal energy. And in the ECHL, let's be reasonable. You don't get a lot of these moments that really do sell you tickets overnight. And that's what I mean when I said it was a byproduct. Really, and then your walk-up, you don't really see the amount of walk-up that we got like that overnight. It really, the vibe in that building was something you never see on a Sunday afternoon in the middle of a AA pro season very often. So there's really not a lot else to say about it. It was just really, the energy was unbelievable.
Specifically, you've talked about the energy and how things just kind of felt different in the building. Can you speak specifically to the fan reaction, whether it was during warm-ups, whether it was the first shift, whether it was during the fight, but your observation of the fans in that building and what it meant for them to be witnessing it and supporting Terry Ryan and just having the time of their life?
Yeah, I think for a lot of people, pardon me, they had heard the stories about him, especially a lot of our younger side of our fan base, probably had folks like me or their parents tell them oh, we had, Terry Ryan, this big thing. And really just having dwelled on the positives of what, because he had a lot of great fights and a great junior career, a great highlight reel there. So that would be what the story was. But, almost turned into this Paul Bunyan-esque figure, I think. And I think people just wanted to come and see what was left of him. But really, he really delivered on everything that he ever was, I think, as a player. He brought the energy. And during that shift, and you can hear it in my voice during my call, I really didn't know what he was going to do in this game. Was he going to get a regular shift? Was he going to go out and drop him? No, that's crazy. What reason would he have to go out and fight, especially in the third period of a 3? And forget it. There's no way he's going to do this. So there was genuine surprise in my own voice, I think, when he actually dropped the gloves and the hockey teammate in him just took over. And you can hear in the post-game interview when he talks about, I saw that James Melindy took a hit, and from there he just kind of blacked out. And I'm paraphrasing, of course, but it's true. It just the teammate in Terry just took over. That never goes away. I didn't with Terry, and it was just such a cool. And to see the fans in real time, and as myself through a fan lens, almost getting to live that moment with pure shock and excitement. Shades of 95 all over again. I think everyone in the building kind of felt that. Everyone tuned in online. That's another piece of this. Just miraculously, this game was scheduled to be live streamed for free on Flow Hockey, like the league's streaming platform. And like that happens to each team like once or twice a year. And it just so happened that this Sunday afternoon game was the free one.
Oh, wow.
And this thing was, thanks to Spit and Chicklets and those guys, like this thing was blown up. Like we had tens of thousands of viewers on a silly little ECHL broadcast on a Sunday afternoon. Like it really, everyone fed off of all the energy, the lore, the man, the myth, the legend that was Terry Ryan. And to see it all kind of culminate when he came out of the tunnel, he was named the game's hardest working player. And just seeing one more curtain call, one more bow to the crowd, man, just so cool. Like, I don't think it's even really hit home to me as Chris Ballard, the Newfoundland hockey fan, Chris, the kid who grew up, idolizing players like Terry. Like, I think over time, it's only going to be like, man, I can't believe we got to be a part of that. It was really too cool.
Well, nothing like having someone whose job it is to make a story out of hockey day in and day out to come and tell us the story of Terry Ryan's appearance in pro hockey this past weekend. Chris Ballard, he is the play-by-play broadcaster for the Newfoundland Growlers. Of course, thank you so much for joining us on the show today. We wish you the best of luck in the second half of the season. And if you want to follow him on Twitter, I highly recommend it. Keep track and keep tabs of everything that the Growlers are doing. You can find him at Growlers Ballard. And Chris, it's been a great chat, and you are welcome to come back anytime here on the Canadiens Connection.
Guys, thanks so much for having me. This has been awesome.
And a big thank you to both Amy Johnson and one Chris Ballard for joining the show there. Lots of great stories to be had there, and I'm sure you all enjoyed listening to that as well. I think on that note, we'll head into our final break here. But first, I do want to remind everyone of our Canadiens Connection question of the week. And to our listeners, we asked, should Kent Hughes be pursuing a point-per-game player during the rebuild? We want to hear from you. So take this final break here to think about it. Stay with us. This is the Canadiens Connection podcast here on Rocket Sports Radio.
The Canadiens Connection is proud to be a partner of Rocket Sports Media, digital media publishers of sports and entertainment websites. Their mission is to build a worldwide network of sports fans who are informed, engaged, entertained, and connected. Learn more about RSM, its team, and its portfolio of brands at rocketsportsmedia.com. I bet you enjoy sporting your best Habs jerseys, dressing up your kids and pets in the cutest Habs gear, and showing off your decked-out hockey cave or fanning. Well, don't just show your friends, show your Habs. The Rocket Sports Media team wants you to boast your finest pictures for our global network of Montreal Canadiens fans. Include the hashtag #ShowYourHabs when posting your fan photos on Twitter, Facebook, or Instagram. Then log on to showyourhabs.com to see your entries, along with photos and posts from Habs fans all over the world. A proud member of the Rocket Sports Media Network. If you're a business owner looking for the perfect platform to reach a targeted audience of customers, Rocket Sports Media is the solution. Our global hockey community provides unmatched social media reach to an attentive demographic of sports and entertainment fans. We can provide visibility to your company, helping you to engage and leverage this prime group of potential clientele. In addition, we also offer sponsorship opportunities for fan events and featured areas of website content, giving you name and logo recognition. Visit rocketsportsmedia.com to contact us regarding this unique marketing opportunity. For the most trusted source of news, analysis, and features about the Montreal Canadiens, log in to thn.com/Montreal, your year-round source for anything Habs related. That's thn.com/Montreal.
Welcome back to episode 279 of the Canadiens Connection podcast here on Rocket Sports Radio. You can follow at Habs Connection on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram. Also check out the website, canadiensconnection.fm. And feel free to text us anytime via the Rocket Sports text line, 5853-ROCKET. That's 5853-ROCKET. And once again, just wanted to give a big thank you to both Chris Ballard and Patrick Williams for joining us on this show. Both fantastic interviews that were done there. And also Amy Johnson for popping in a little bit there. Enjoyed listening to all of those and looking forward to having some of them back, maybe potentially in the future, particularly Patrick Williams, who's always a great source of knowledge. But Rick, in this segment, I think we can both agree, the Montreal Canadiens, kind of difficult to keep track of. Always something interesting going on, right?
We have lots of ways that, lots of content and lots of ways you can consume that content about the Montreal Canadiens.
Absolutely. And did you know that we cover the Montreal Canadiens for the hockey news? And you can find all that content at thn.com/Montreal. All your Canadiens coverage in one place. We have game day content, feature articles. We also cover the prospects. So make sure you head over to thn.com/Montreal. Also, if you like multimedia, we also have a YouTube channel. Make sure you subscribe to it and just search @AllHabs and you'll be able to find it. Throughout the week, we have a couple different shows. Two of them are hosted by Amy Johnson. She hosts the Habs Hockey Report Show, and the latest episode is entitled Kent Hughes Speaks, 5 takeaways from his mid-season review. And also, you can find the Rocket Hockey Report Show covering the Laval Rocket. And the latest episode there is entitled Can You Believe It? Laval Could Make the Playoffs. So head over there, check out both of those shows throughout the week. Leave a like if you like what you saw. Leave a comment to get involved in that conversation. And I hope you enjoy all of those shows. We also put this podcast on our YouTube channel as well, the Canadiens Connection podcast. And last week's episode was entitled Hudson, Machar, Beck, Fowler, Analyst Russ Cohen rates Habs prospects. So you get to go on there. If you prefer watching through YouTube, you can go there. If you missed it, check that one out. Like, subscribe if you enjoy what you saw. And also, you're going to want to hit that notification bell because throughout the month, we do a couple of live stream watch-alongs on YouTube. The next one coming up is the New York Islanders visiting Montreal. Thursday, January the 25th, myself, as well as my Rocket Sports Media colleague Nathan, will be hosting that. Make sure that you tune in. Make sure that you get involved. We have a live chat going. You get live play-by-play. You get some commentary, some interesting Habs questions. So make sure you mark the calendar for that one. Thursday, January the 25th, the New York Islanders visit Montreal, and you can find all of that at All Habs on YouTube. So make sure that you're subscribed.
And it's a lot of fun. The live streams, the watch-alongs are just the best way to watch a game. We have so many Canadiens fans that join us and have the ability to chat and ask questions. And it's easy. Just turn your TV on, turn the game on, turn the sound off. You're not missing anything there anyway. Put YouTube on and join our staff, both Nathan and Michael, as well as fans from all over the world. And it's a great way to enjoy the game. And our live streams have been growing and growing and growing. Tons of fans, lots of fun. Best way to watch a game.
Absolutely. And if you haven't already, make sure that you're subscribed to the premier Rocket Sports radio podcast on your favorite podcasting app, The Canadiens Connection. You can also find every single episode at canadiensconnection.fm here every single Saturday throughout the year to give you great Montreal Canadiens content. We are your inside link to the Montreal Canadiens. And that brings us to our Canadiens Connection question of the week as we turn it over to our listeners. And we asked, should Kent Hughes be pursuing a point-per-game player during the rebuild? We want to hear from you. 5853 is the Rocket Sports text line. You can text that anytime. And Rick, what's the email if people have a little bit more to say?
Email address is hello@rocketsportsmedia.com.
You can also reach out to us on all of our social medias. Just search @Habs Connection on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram. And throughout the week, we get tons of messages, whether it's tweets, emails, comments, even on our YouTube channel. I'm going to read off a couple from Facebook, and then I'll send it over to you, Rick, to read a couple off of YouTube. And the first one comes from Bill McLean in regards to the Edmonton versus Montreal game. Bill says, I called it. Game over. As soon as the careless high stick happened, Matheson, control your stick. So, of course, that in reference to the overtime penalty by Mike Matheson that was a little bit undisciplined, and that power play by Edmonton was followed by an Evan Bouchard goal to win that game. So, Bill McLean certainly not happy about that one. And another one coming from George Lang. And George says, happy to see that Slavkovsky is improving very much. And yeah, we agree too. It's nice to see that Slavkovsky's been in a bit of a bigger role. He's been on that top line for a while now. He does not look out of place like he used to. So that's certainly nice to see.
So if you have comments, you want to make them on Facebook, like both Bill and George there. We have a number of pages. Rocket Sports is one of our Facebook pages. The Habs Connection is another one. So we're happy to hear your comments from there. The next two comments are from YouTube. And this one is from Leo Steph 9196. This is about the media availability from Kent Hughes. He says, or he or she, Leo Steph says, it looks like Hughes is in a world of his own, in a world where everything goes according to plan. Yes, the situation in the AHL has gotten better in the last couple of weeks, but the results and the development of young players, as we know, are not the same thing. Good point. The wins and losses aren't necessarily good development. He goes on to say, he or she goes on to say, other answers are more like there is no answer. And I don't know what there is more. There's no desire to say too much, or he simply has nothing to say. So he says that yes, that there's Kent Hughes out there making words, putting a word salad together. So it's either that he doesn't have a lot to say, or he just doesn't have a desire to share what the plan is. So thank you for that, Leo Steph 9196. The next one comes from SB 3275, and this is about the Laval Rocket and their improvement. SB says 2 weeks into January and Laval is still winning. They are 10-3-2 since Arbor Jacki was inserted into the lineup. He seems to have energized them, brought leadership and poise on the blue line, and everybody is playing with a chip on their shoulders. Jakub Dobas has upped his play and is finally playing to his potential, and Kazimir Kaskasku is doing great. Hard to not see them continue their stellar play. They're now fourth in the North and playing like one of the top teams in the AHL. So great comment there from SB 3275.
Yeah, we enjoy hearing from all of our listeners and viewers. So make sure when you reach out to us, just let us know your name and where you're from. That way we know who we're talking to. And we sometimes will lightly edit these just to make sure everyone can understand some of these messages along the way. And we look forward to hearing from all of our listeners as we go through this next week. And coming up, the Montreal Canadiens do have 3 games starting today on January the 20th. Montreal visits Boston. The game after that comes on January the 23rd. Ottawa visits Montreal. I feel like this one's going to be a bit of a bloodbath. Something's going to happen with Gallagher, I'm pretty sure. On the 25th of January, the New York Islanders visit Montreal, and that's where you'll want to head over to YouTube to watch our live stream. Myself and Nathan at All Habs. Hit subscribe, hit that notification bell. That way you know when all of our content comes out. And with that, I think that's going to be a wrap for us today. Thank you all for listening to the Canadiens Connection podcast. Make sure that you're subscribed in the player or on your favorite podcasting app. You can share it on social media too if you like what you heard. Enjoy the week. We'll be back here next Saturday, January the 27th, 2023 for another great episode. Thank you for listening to the Canadiens Connection podcast here on Rocket Sports Radio.
Click subscribe so you never miss an episode of Canadiens Connection. Follow us on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram at Rocket Sports.